Good afternoon, everyone. We're a couple of minutes past the hour. Sorry, we're a couple minutes behind. Thanks everyone for participating. I see we have quite a few folks online joining us, and I know we just sent the agenda electronically just before the meeting started. And as you'll see at the end, we do have an opportunity for questions and remarks. But first off, we are going to kick off with on the topic of direct billing. And Margaret, I think that you are on.
Hi, Director. This is Margaret.
All right. Thank you, Margaret, for joining us.
Absolutely. So thank you again. And I wanted to provide an update on direct billing. We have received input from providers, and based on the current status of the transition, out of an abundance of caution, we are deferring the go live date for direct billing by 1 month to April 1st. As we've stated throughout this transition, we are committed to making this to be a smooth transition for providers. So in recognition of that, we are going to defer the go live date. Again, that is for direct billing by 1 month to April 1st. Additional communication will be sent out. This will include an updated timeline and activities that we expect to occur during the month of March. We want to recognize all of the efforts that providers have made to put us in a position for enrollment to happen, for the direct billing to happen. So again, in recognition that we want it to be as smooth a transition as possible, we are going to defer the go live date. So expect additional communication to come out on that topic. Again, we will outline expected activities during the month of March, but we wanted to provide that update today. With that, I'll turn it back over to our partners at DDSN.
Thank you, Margaret.
Sure. So I just wanted to follow up a little bit related to direct billing and fee for service. Although we're going to delay the implementation of direct billing to HHS to April 1st, the thing that we are going to do on March 1st is we are going to go to full fee for service. So as you'll recall, for January and February, you guys were receiving band payments for January, and then we were comparing your billings to your band payments. If you billed more than the band amount, we paid it to you. If you didn't, we let you know, but we held you harmless. In March, we'll do a full reconciliation related to those band payments. So you will get your band payments for the month of March, but at the end of the month when DDSN does your billing for you and we do the reconciliation, we will pay you if you billed more than the band amount. We will expect reimbursement if you billed less than the amount. Oh yeah, so the other thing that is happening that's going to be just a little different is that the decision to delay really didn't happen until like today. So we are going to have to do some adjustments at DDSN to get you your first March band payment. You guys are used to receiving those band payments on the 1st of the month. This one's probably going to be delayed a few days. So it probably means that you'll get it around the 4th, right? So I just wanted you to know it'll be a few days late because we had completely stopped that process, and we'll have to, we'll have to we have to restart it. So there'll be just kind of a delay. There's a question about, so that means the semi-monthly remits for March will be coming out soon. So the semi-monthly payments for March, the bands payments, the first one will likely be delayed, probably around March 4th. The second one will happen around the same time, which is the 16th. So Tyler's question is, how will March absences or leave days be handled? DDSN does not have the ability to bill for leave days through DHHS. So those leave days will be counted as absences for the month of March. Leave days will go into effect on April 1st. If there's some big issue around that, we can certainly look at it and talk to HHS about it. But whenever the leave day policy was developed, it was developed for use by the provider network. Again, like I said, DDSN has never billed for leave days. So TheraP is billing. TheraP billing still looking at being turned on next week. So Ryan, the hope, and the TheraP billing project is a little later in the agenda, but the hope is that by delaying a month, TheraP will still split the authorizations effective March 1st. You guys will get the new authorizations, be able to use them to create billing authorizations, be able to assign people to programs, look and see what you have, what you don't have, in order to kind of prepare yourself. On the flip side of that, if you choose not to use TheraP, you also have the opportunity to load some data into the web tool. If you want to use the web tool, you can start entering your people as long as you have your web tool login. One of the things we'll be focusing on in March is making sure that we get everyone fully enrolled with web tool logins, because there's not going to be another delay. So there's another question about leave days. Why don't we just kind of table that for a minute, and Margaret, HHS, and DDSN can kind of get together and try to figure out what to do around leave days. The thing to know about leave days is if we start billing them in March, if by some chance we could, they will start counting against your days. You know, at this point, you guys, up until the end of February, your leave days have kind of been covered by the band payments, and we've not billed any, so there's none that have been taken away. As soon as they start being billed, they're going to start counting against that person's total leave days. So we just need to know that. And so no, Robin, there will be no billing in the web tool during the month of March. All direct billing is delayed until April 1st.
So good afternoon, folks. Dr. Fry attended a meeting recently with providers, and there were some questions that were posed that she asked if I would be willing to provide a response to, and I'm happy to. The question, first of all, was kind of around regional centers and their historic ability to serve as a safety net to providers when providers were serving people that were very challenging or inappropriately placed, for lack of a better word. Another question was kind of around taking people who were in critical circumstances and the ability to get out of that if it didn't work, is kind of what I'm reading. So protecting the provider from harm if they agree to take someone who's in critical circumstances and it doesn't work out. As far as the regional centers go, I think, you know, you're all aware, as I am, that the regional centers have downsized in census. They have downsized in money. With money follows the person over the years. They are not the safety net that they used to be, and they cannot serve in that capacity. It's just not possible that the regional centers will be an out for people who providers are unable to serve. The same is true really for the people on critical needs lists. Providers at this juncture are really going to have to re-examine the processes that they go through when they're considering serving someone and really think about whether or not it's going to be a good fit and whether or not they have appropriate staff to deal with what could potentially come their way. Those options are just no longer available. As an aside, when we're talking about residential habilitation, and I'm sure all of you are very well aware of the home and community-based settings regulation that was issued in 2014 with compliance expected by 2023, and realize that if a setting, a residential habilitation setting, is a provider-owned or controlled space, then the person has a legally enforceable rental agreement or lease agreement. So it is concerning and something that you should consider when you're talking as a landlord who is renting a space to someone and they are displaced from that. The other side of that is when you contract with DDSN, you are agreeing to give at least 30 days notice for residential in particular before you decide to no longer support that person or terminate the authorization from the case manager for that person. So I really think that those are things that you need to be mindful of. They're things you need to think about. Some of us here at DDSN have started thinking about those things. A couple of things that we are working on now is the ability to have, for lack of a better way to say it, sort of a repository of information. And it really will house, we're thinking it will house two different kinds of information. The first kind of information would be information from you as from any residential habilitation provider that tells us anticipated vacancies. If you know that, you know, horrible example, but if somebody who lives in a CTH2 is on hospice and they are not doing well, there's an anticipated vacancy. You know who currently lives in that house, you know the kinds of people who might enjoy also living there. So information about anticipated vacancies, information about any vacancy that you have will be there. In addition to that, we want to include information about people who need or are seeking a different residential habilitation provider or setting. So this would include people who currently live in ICFs who've expressed a desire to leave, sort of your Olmsted people. It would also include people who have been determined by DDSN to be in critical circumstances and need a place to live. And then the last group of people could be anyone that a case manager is supporting who lives somewhere and they want to live somewhere else. So for example, if you are living in one county of the state and your preference is to be closer to family in another county, your case manager can report that information to DDSN. It would be included, not the person's full name, date of birth, or any of that, but information about that person, their living preferences, where they're wanting to live, that sort of information would be included. So as you, as a provider of residential habilitation, are anticipating a vacancy, you will have information about people who might want you as a provider. And then DDSN could facilitate that sort of meeting and matching, if that makes sense.
Any questions related to those questions that were covered? All right, I think Debbie, you're next up related to 6.2 FMAP.
Yep. 2.2 million has been dispersed thus far, 43.5%. There are still 68 of 114 that have not requested any funds yet. If you have any questions regarding that, please let me know. I'll be more than willing to resend out Dr. Fry's memo of January 7th, which details the twofold plan that we need to see in which to issue the funding. This is looked at every day. It needs to be sent to financialtech.support@ddsn.sc.gov. Room and board update. We have 8 boards left. All of them have been touched and some are awaiting some information. I hope to have all of this done within the next week. Cost report update on Monday, February 28th. And yes, I am smiling. The 2018 cost report will be filed. They have already actively working on 2020. And from all accounts, in the meetings I have, we should be done with 20 and 21 before the end of December of this year. And there. Right.
So I'm going to go back to a couple of questions that I think I missed along the way related to previous items. The first one is, do we still use ResLog and DSAL for March attendance? The answer to that is yes, right? The TheraP module will be there, and as far as putting data in that attendance module, it doesn't really matter if you do it. You just better not submit claims through it, right? So you kind of have to be careful so that double claims aren't submitted. But you will be able to look at the attendance module in TheraP. You'll be able to compare it to what you have in ResLog and DSAL. But the attendance and the case notes and the ISP data for March will continue to be entered the way that it always has. There's a question that does DDSN plan to develop other safety nets or make future budget requests for the purpose, since regional centers won't be serving that purpose now?
I think that's a good question, and it's certainly something we need to consider. I think that because DDSN historically has provided safety nets for providers, there maybe has not been a push by a provider or most providers to develop that infrastructure within themselves. So I think it is important for DDSN to consider that, to consider how we can support providers. And certainly if you have some ideas about some things that would be helpful, I personally would appreciate your thoughts.
Right, and I think we might be able to think through some ways that we might be able to use an institutional respite type service to do some short-term stuff, but we can't, you know, that whole, like, just having somebody move in with DDSN is gonna be difficult. The other thing around institutional respite is right now that's challenging for anybody because of the staffing shortage that everyone is experiencing, and just the fact that there's not a lot of space and opportunity.
The other thing that I'll say is that for DSM boards who are operating ICFs, you too can provide institutional respite.
Right, correct.
So just keep that in mind.
Correct. So there's a question, has the TheraP billing module had a successful test with DHHS billing system? So yes, TheraP has submitted test claims to DHHS. There has been some success and acceptance of that claim. DHHS is currently working with TheraP to do some issuing of what they call an 835. It's about claims, claims data, like full claims data, so that it populates the system. That's some more of the kinds of things that we'll be doing during the month of March. to make sure that that works properly, and that you guys, have the information that you need. So there's a question about the attendance module being made available in test mode for providers to practice. So we're gonna, work with HHS about some testing that we can do with providers that are fully enrolled. So if you're fully enrolled and you have your Medicaid ID, we'll try to figure out a way that we can give you some opportunities for testing in that environment. So as a private provider for SLP1, how should we determine the units for billing? I know DDSN has a report that is used to determine utilization. Will we be privy to that report for our billing? So if you utilize the Therapp billing module, you'll be using time in and time out for the billing in the Therapp module. If you're not using the Therapp billing module and you need some kind of report, we can try to get it to you. I think there is, like at yesterday's meeting, there was some conversation about a report that's out there. We did look at a report that has been available for a while related to ISP data. There were some inconsistencies in that report, so we chose not to use it for direct input into Therapp. It's a cleaner way to say time in, time out, and have the system calculate the units. So just kind of putting that out there. So for the March billing before Therapp is live, you will continue to do SLP documentation the way you always have, and we will do the billing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right, so Lindsay, you want change the way you're doing SLP1 billing for March, you'll do what you've always done. So Ralph says, what about those who have been judicially committed, who are evicted through the court system? Who pays to have them represented in magistrate's court?
I don't know. I'd have to research that.
Right.
If you wouldn't mind, Ralph, send me that question so I can consider it.
So Jason says a suggestion, in rural areas, they need more behavior support providers to help train the staff and develop plans, or have access to funding to develop those resources within her staff. Yeah, we totally agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can you speak to the drop-in rates associated with CTH1 level 3, drop-in rates for CTH1 level 3 individuals from what we see level 2s and level 3s have been collapsed together at level 2 rates? So the old system, there was a fixed price bid with different services, not just around CTH1, it was kind of around the entire service gamut. There were different service levels, there were different rates for different service levels. The rates that are out there in the 8 tiers are the only available rates to people who receive residential habilitation in the waiver outside of a single case agreement. So for those people in CTH1, there's 2 levels if you live in that setting. Those rates were built based on kind of input from providers about services that were being provided to those people. That's really all I can speak to that. There is some information in the HHS frequently asked questions document that's located on the microsite that gives you some information about how the rates were built. That's where I would suggest that you kind of start with that. So I think that's all the questions. I'm next on the agenda related to the Therapp billing update. As I said, our plan is to continue the current timeline with Therapp. The thought there is that the migration will occur over the weekend. I'm still going to get you guys a list of your current service authorizations by tomorrow so that you can make as many corrections as possible prior to the split of the authorizations. Once the authorizations are split, you guys will be able to go ahead and acknowledge those authorizations. If you've been to the Therapp trainings, you understand it's not just a button, right? You acknowledge it, then you assign the person to a program within your agency. So you will go through and acknowledge each one of those authorizations, assign those people to programs. It has you choose kind of like a a procedure code, but it only gives you the one procedure code that's on the authorization. So you'll choose that, and then that will help build your attendance roster for each of those programs. So the good news is with this delay, you kind of have some time to accept those service offs, make sure that you have everybody assigned to the correct program, make sure your attendance rosters are correct and include everybody that they need to. If you choose not to bill through TheraP, I want to make sure you understand that the need for a service authorization is still there, right? So even if you choose to bill in a different manner, at post-payment review as a provider of Medicaid services, you have to have a service authorization before you provide the service. So those service authorizations kind of need to be your number one priority at this point. I think that's really it around the TheraP billing. We also will work with TheraP over the next, month to make sure that we get those ICD-10 diagnoses pushed down to the provider IDF. We can provide a report in the meanwhile, but you don't really need it now until we get to kind of that next phase. All right, so the next item on the agenda is EVV. For those of you who don't know, EVV is electronic visit verification. It is a federal requirement that we've been trying to meet for some time. There's been a group of people here and at Health and Human Services working on this project. The federal requirement is that there is kind of a geolocation component to home care services, right? So it applies to those services that are typically provided in a person's residence at a location that's not kind of a center-based service. So it's stuff like personal care, attendant care, but it also includes some of the services that have historically been provided by DDSN provider agencies like respite and in-home supports and adult companion. So the EVV anticipated go live date right now is mid-May. We're currently in the testing phase of EVV. Service providers will be given an opportunity to participate in a launch in April so that they can practice and test using the system prior to the May go live date. So I just wanted to kind of give you guys an update on where things are going with EVV and where we are with it. So we've had somebody say, can we explain again the billing for March as it relates to DDSN recoupment? So the billing for March, for January and February, you guys get a van payment. When the month closes out, we look at your van payment and compare it to the billings that you had during that month. If you billed more than we paid you in the van, we've given you that money. And like in January, we paid out an additional $900,000 into the provider network for billings that were over the van payments. But in January and February, for any provider who did not bill as much as the van payments, we kind of held you harmless. We let you keep the van payments. We didn't shore up any reimbursements to DDSN that couldn't be billed. In March, we will.
And just as an FYI, in January, that loss was $847,000.
There's a question about companion services and why it's in EVV. It's in EVV because the federal government said it's an EVV service, right? So we realize that some of these services may not be provided exactly in the person's home, but they are services that the federal government intends to monitor with geolocation. So, we'll be able to manage it from that standpoint. What was the loss number again?
847,000.
847,000. All right, the next item on the agenda is ICF rate.
The rate on January 1st, as you were all aware, was an increase to $337.51 for community ICFs. We're well aware that an adjustment needs to be made. It is not complete at this time, and as soon as we get it completed, we will roll it out to you and make you aware of it. Family support changes. Up to, well, we've been doing the payment schedules twice a month. For those 35 agencies that get family support monies. You were getting it on the 1st and on the 16th. When the decision was made to go fee for service and effective March 1st, there was no longer, at the time this decision was made, to have a payment schedule. We made the decision to pay a monthly payment for the last 4 months, and it would be paid out for the beginning of March, April, May, and June for the balance of the contracts that were issued back in July for family support monies. Deborah should have sent, no, I know she did, yesterday sent out through DocuSign the dollar amounts of all of those to all those boards that were affected, and it has been forwarded onto accounts payable. So very shortly, you should see those funds in your account. And they won't be on the March payment schedule because I've already processed them for payment.
Yeah. Things are gonna be a little wonky for March, but you know, it's for the right reasons.
And that's all I got.
Okay. There was a question from Donna about when a person moves within the county or changes day programs. We used to not need new authorizations. Now that we assign their authorization to a specific program, will we need a new one? How will that happen? So Donna, the service authorizations are still written to the provider of service for the service that the person's receiving. Okay, so I'll give a couple of examples. If an authorization is written to Thrive Upstate or Johnny for day activity, that's the service off. Then Thrive Upstate takes that service off and uses it to create a billing off, and they assign Johnny to a specific day program. If Johnny decides he's going to go to a different day program at Thrive, but still get day activity, the change would happen in the billing off, right? Not in the service off, so it doesn't require a change from the case manager. When you start talking about moving, the thing you kind of need to understand there is those residential authorizations are written based on the level of residential habilitation, the type of support that the person is going to receive through residential habilitation, as well as the location in which they receive it. So although it works the same way as the day off, you kind of have to ask yourself two things. Do you have the right service on the off, and is the person going to receive the same service at the new location? If they are, you just change the billing off. If they're not, it will go back through the case manager as a change to the service.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, it was nice to see several of y'all at the State House yesterday. Enjoyed talking with you for a few moments. But I just wanted to remind y'all that Monday, March the 2nd is Disability Advocacy Day at the State House. Registration begins at 9 o'clock on the north side of the State House, which is the Gervais Street side. Speakers will include Senator Thomas Alexander, Attorney General Wilson, Superintendent of Education Molly Spearman, and our own State Director, Dr. Fry. When the event concludes around 11 o'clock, everyone's going to be encouraged to engage legislators and discuss issues that affect DSN and those we serve. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Also, I'd like to remind everybody that March is also Brain Injury Awareness Month. I'd like everybody to participate in that to help us bring awareness to those with brain injuries.
So We have one additional announcement here. We want to introduce our new CFO here at DDSN, Tracy Hunt. She's on the screen, but we look really small, so I'm not sure that y'all can see her. But we are so grateful to have her experience and talent at DDSN, and I'm gonna pass it over so she can say a few things and introduce herself.
It's nice to meet everybody virtually. My name is Tracy Hunt. I was at SCETV previously as their CFO and their Vice President of Administration. I was sad about leaving that agency, but I have been so welcomed here at this one. I have over 20 years of state government experience. I know I don't look that old, is what I told everybody else that said that, no. I have lived in Camden most of my life and have a husband and a 9-year-old son. We're huge Braves fans. But anything that you have a question about, feel free to reach out and call me or email me. I'm just looking forward to working with all you guys and meeting you as well. And I appreciate the opportunity from Dr. Fry to be here, and I know that there's great things ahead.
And with that, we want to see if there are any remaining questions that haven't been entered into the chat.
Yes, there's one in there about how to bill for day services for ICF individuals. My understanding is we don't bill for, we never have, right? So ICF is kind of a one rate
Yes.
for everything. So even though I think we had them reporting some stuff on DSAL in the past, there's no billing.
No.
So,
And all the billing for anything to do with ICF continues to come through DDSN.
right. That's not going direct
It's
bill.
not a waiver service.
And then I think Margie was correcting that March the 2nd is a Wednesday, not a Monday. I don't know if Tommy said Monday. He probably meant to say Wednesday, but he said.
What did I say?
I think you said Monday, but you probably meant to say Wednesday for
I'm sure I
disability.
did.
Yeah, so it's the Wednesday, March the 2nd. Any update on the 10% FMAP? So we don't have any further update versus other than what we announced at the commission. Look for further information about how we'll roll that out as we kind of meet with DHHS and get that settled. So what will be the process for obtaining authorizations for critical or emergency residential admissions? So some of you might have noticed that DDSN posted some positions for state level case managers. We obviously, the first line to get an authorization is going to be through the person's case manager. But we wanted to have some people available here to react very quickly if there's a problem getting something when it's critical or urgent or timely. You know, usually we know about a critical admission. So we're going to kind of work through those as they happen. And, you know, if worst case scenario, we can get you an authorization if we need to. Will you have a finance meeting this coming month, or are those done with Pat leaving? So.
Sure. So as you all just met our new CFO, I'm going to continue to talk with her and determine whether we need to continue those monthly meetings or if there is a different format or cadence. And we will keep everyone updated related to any finance specific meetings.
So there's a question about when the audit directive will be coming out. I can't really speak to that directive specifically, but I will say that with the transition to direct billing, you guys can look for a lot of changes in policy directives. You know, over the next month, there's a lot of things we need to kind of clean up and change related to the fact that we are no longer the provider of record of the services. And so, you know, we'll be working through those. If you have a specific question about the audit directive or a specific comment, I would encourage you to put the comment on the website. That's kind of how we track comments related to any of those directives. And so any of that, I think, is kind of the best thing that we can do.
Well, I think that answers the bulk of the questions we've received. I want to thank everyone for participating. It looks like we have, well, internal folks included, 85 participants in this meeting. And we're optimistic that we continue to get increasingly robust attendance. Our goal is to be able to communicate effectively and consistently with all providers. If you have any questions we haven't responded to, please let us know via email. Any of us are happy to make sure that we get the right person involved. And we're happy that we're able to provide this additional 30 days. And we believe that that will allow the April 1 rollout to be smooth and positive for everyone.
I think the only thing is we want to make sure that we keep our foot on the gas. There's a lot of work to be done between now and April 1st, and we don't want to get there and not have it done. So, you know, I'm hoping that we can, you know, we will continue to have the Monday meetings with TheraP. We will continue to meet with providers as necessary. You know, you guys please call as you have questions. I want to use this opportunity to make sure that people have the best chance for success when the go live happens on April 1st.
All right.
Thanks.